Okay.
Okay, do you wanna?
I'll come up and
Okay, cool.
give you just a little bit of an introduction.
Sounds good, thank you.
Thank you for being here today, Mary Sue.
welcome.
It's so great to see you. As most of you are aware, we had to do some juggling around, and our previously scheduled speaker from the Mitchell Hamlin Law School, we're going to have to reschedule her. Susan Martin's her name. We're eager to get her back in the conversation that she was going to lead, but that created some wonderful space. Last week we had just a great opportunity to kind of explore this emerging thing that is a very spirit-led. I announced it at this first service. The Congregation Council voted to move forward with this effort. We received a lot of very positive feedback and some great questions being asked. But mostly we just want to keep moving forward. And so still a lot of logistical things to get sorted out, but we're headed in the right direction. So the prospect that Valerie Roy plus Resource Family connected through Settled will be able to use our campus as a home for the coming months is really exciting news for us. But in thinking about the challenges facing our neighbors in our midst, we thought we'd turn to, and blessedly she was available to meet with us today. This is Mary Sue Hansen, formerly with the, it's on here somewhere, isn't it? Suburban Ramsey Family Collaborative. But I have not met anybody in Roseville who knows more about what our neighbors are really facing and the challenges, especially with those dealing with issues related to poverty and challenges with housing, with food insecurity, all of those things. And so Mary Sue is going to give us a deep dive course in what it is to live and in Roseville, and how services are available and made available, and how we manage those things. And hopefully you've got some time for questions for us. Yeah. That's it. Enough for me.
Okay.
Mary Sue, thank you for being here.
Thanks, everybody. Hi. Well, I am really grateful to be with you all. I don't know if you know this, but I've been kind of working with you all for 24 years in different capacities. I'm Pastor Clowder, and I still stay in touch. And I hit him up for help a lot with when I'm working with families in Washington County. You all have helped us with the Angel Fund, with Keystone Community Services, and our Clues Community Social Workers, our school linked efforts. So I said to Esther, you know, I have to be truly honest, and this isn't to be competitive or to be haughty or anything, but when I've reached out for help on behalf of the families we work with, it's the Lutherans who truly, no, I'm not kidding, you truly step up, very action oriented and very spirit driven, and say, how can we help? And so I really am grateful to be here. And of course, if you ask me to come and speak, I will speak. And I'm sorry about the mask. I have a father-in-law who's very ill, and we are his only caregivers, and we have promised to do what we can to keep him safe. And that means when the whole world has stopped, you know, putting masks on, I have to still protect myself for him. So I am sorry, because it's not fun to hear a speaker with a mask on. But this is what I look like. Hi, everybody. Bye. Okay. So anyway, yes, we're the Suburban Ramsey Family Collaborative. We've been around for 24 years. I've been the director the whole time. And believe me, I was thinking someday I'll retire, but after talking to Esther, maybe I'll never retire. I don't know. We have diversified our leadership. I have a lot of co-leads who are Indigenous, Black, people of color who lead with me. So I do have a diversified team, but I am the director and have been for 24 years. I come from a rural community, Sleepy Eye, Minnesota. So I have a real rural perspective of how people help each other and how people step up to help when people are in need. I live in St. Paul, but I work in Suburban Ramsey. I worship in South Minneapolis. So I kind of have a perspective from all over the place. But our collaborative is the backbone organization for all of Suburban Ramsey County. When I say all of Suburban Ramsey County, that's everything except St. Paul proper. So we're talking 4 school district communities, 57 schools, 17 communities. So we're large systems change workers. So that's my perspective, very broad. Yeah, you will hear we're very connected to children, youth, and families who are struggling with their health, learning, safety, and security, pre-birth to 21. But when the pandemic hit, we moved our scope to pre-birth to 24. And when the second year of the pandemic hit, we went pre-birth to 28. And the reason is youth are struggling, young adults are struggling very much in this economy. And so we teamed up with workforce support services called Workforce Solutions in Ramsey County. We teamed up with our sister collaborative called the Ramsey County Children's Mental Health Collaborative. We've teamed up with folks in St. Paul in their school district. And really, we don't have a lot of boundaries anymore because there's such need. We're all working together. It's all hands on deck. So you can go to the next slide. Or somebody can.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Peter. Our collaborative, like it says, big systems change stuff. So I always say we're complex, adaptive, flexible, responsive. And that's because families' needs are complex, very multi-layered, and they're involved in multi-systems. And our services will need to be both formal, because we get some federal dollars that go to the state, that go to our collaborative. They're called local collaborative time study money. So we actually fund formal services, but they must be informal and natural supports like you all, faith communities, because families need their networks to thrive. They need community to thrive. And if you've heard of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, there's also adverse community environments, and social isolation has been a huge adverse social environment these past 2 years because of the pandemic, and has affected our children and our youth's mental health to the point where just last week, we had a second grader with suicidal ideation, second grader. So lots of serious things happening out there. We seek support from traditional and non-traditional approaches. Sometimes traditional approaches haven't kept up with the need. So we have to think really out of the box to better serve children, youth, and families. Multidisciplinary, we need help from employment. We need people with landlords to get engaged. We need people who understand housing, who understand training, apprenticeship work, mental health, basic needs. We need it all. We need everybody's perspectives because families have multiple needs, especially when they've been affected by chronic poverty and homelessness. And it needs to be multi-sector, and I'll talk about that. We need faith communities, we need government, we need nonprofits, we need for-profits. We need everybody on board to help children, youth, and families who are struggling in our communities. If you go to howarethechildren.org, you'll see on the front page that we maintain a basic needs resource directory. And we also maintain what's called a jobs and training resource directory. That's for you all to use anytime. I think it's easier to use on a laptop than it is on your phone. But I am every day meeting with people about crisis response de-escalation, school-linked mental health, basic needs, homeless prevention, youth engagement, all these different things. And every day I learn new resources from all the people I work with. Every resource I put on that directory. So it's updated every day. So if you all are looking to help your families, look at that directory. It's just right on the front page of that website. You can go to the next slide. So when there's relational problems require relational solutions. To me, this is all about relationships and being in true partnership with people who are underserved, undersupported, marginalized in our communities. I think that is the Christian message, is to help those who do not have what we have. So our work is to always ask, how are the children? Because we know if children aren't doing well, our communities aren't doing well. They really aren't. And our children right now, I would say, are really struggling. So you can go to the next slide. So one of the things we do around homeless prevention is we're trying to prevent homelessness before it becomes a chronic pattern in families' life, because once you are homeless the first time, you have a hard time getting out of that pit of homelessness and climbing back out and hanging onto that ledge and moving off that ledge. Many times families who are experiencing homeless for the first time, we may help them climb out. They may climb out on their own. They're hanging on that ledge and they fall back into homelessness. And then we have a pattern of chronic homelessness. So there's a lot of different things we do in our collaborative. Some of the things I'm just talking about around homelessness is we have what's called a rapid response support for practitioners. So my collaborative doesn't work with families directly. I work with all providers who are working with families. So Esther, in the past, we used to provide the schools, community social workers. We still do that. But now if any school practitioner has a really complex case where they're helping a family or a child in their school, and they've hit a brick wall, they can call me directly and I'll create a team around them. It's a rapid response team. So it's not only a push method of here's all the resources we have for you, but it's a pull method. Pull us in when you need us and we'll wrap a team around you. We unify our providers around homeless prevention, employment and training, and early access to mental health support. So it's not enough anymore to say, yeah, I'm a social worker that helps people prevent homelessness, and help them with their basic needs. I'm saying to everybody, it's not enough to do just that. We also have to get them engaged in employment and training. We also have to give them all the access that they can to mental health supports, because the pandemic has really hit those who are most vulnerable in the worst of ways. And it affected so many aspects of their lives. We use this one team accountability system so that we're all making sure that whatever resources we have, there's full utilization of those resources, because everybody says, oh my God, there's so much need out there. Well, I'm tracking every day who's using all these services, who's not. How do we help those who have too many referrals? How do we help those who aren't referring? Why aren't they referring? You told me you have needs. So I'm kind of always doing that within the systems to make sure we have full utilization of our services. We have started realizing that families need hope. Hope is really an important aspect of helping them move out of their circumstances. So we share stories of inspiration from others who have broke free from poverty. We call it stories of hope, optimism, and straight talk. So we have started story banking. We team with landlords. We were teaming with landlords more and more. We were teaming with Metro HRA, Aon, but a lot of the private landlords have kind of shut down. They feel really that they took the biggest hit from COVID because of the eviction moratorium. And even though they got their rent paid for, back rent paid for by the government, there's real hard feelings out there that, you didn't pay your rent when you should have. And so we're struggling in that way. So we need benevolent landlords to work with us again. And then we track every resource, like I said, on our resource directory. So next slide. This you can't see, but this is what I do every week. So when the pandemic hit, we were meeting monthly with all these different groups. We started meeting weekly. So my work pace has quadrupled and hasn't stopped since the pandemic. And with every single thing I learned, I put it in the resource directory, but I also talk about, what are the statuses of various resources. So I have a status check of red, green, and yellow. Green, there's only really 3 organizations right now who are offering any kind of rental support. Yellow is they're on hold. They lost them. They have too much need. They have a waiting list. They don't have enough staff. Staff have left. They have to hire new staff. So their resources are on hold. And red is their resources are stopped for now. And they'll let us know when they have resources again. And this is in the way of rent assistance support. So a lot of families who didn't get Rent Help Minnesota because they don't speak English as their first language, they don't have access to internet that's reliable, they didn't understand how to utilize that resource, they have thousands of dollars of rent that are unspent, and there's no way to bundle that money. For a while there, when we had more green, we were able to say, can you help with 200? Can you help with 400? Can you help with 1,000? Can you help, and we were able to bundle it. That's gone away. We just don't have enough resources. So that's what that talks about. And then the next slide is just where you can find both of those directories that I talked about. So you can go to the next slide. And I want to go a little fast, just a little bit, because I want to hear what you all are doing too. So the current state of affordable housing, I think we're in pretty dangerous times, because if landlords won't even work with us and rent to low-income folks, we right now have higher low-income folks competing with low-income folks for apartments that are somewhat affordable. But landlords are saying, you know, I want double deposit now. I don't want just your first month's rent, your last month's rent. I want your first month's rent, last month's rent, and a double deposit for you to be able. And like I showed you before, our agencies don't have that money. The families don't have that money. So where are they going? So we have them waiting for shelter. We have them doubled up in homes where, you know, very crowded housing. We have them actually in camps and pitching tents or living in their cars. And this is really truly happening all throughout our communities. So like I said, you know, like just a couple weeks ago, St. Andrews, they were getting 60 calls a day for their shelters. You know, we have 33 families on the shelter waiting list for Ramsey County. The cost of housing has increased so much to the point that even if you get any kind of cash assistance, and even if you get subsidized housing, like a Section 8 voucher, you still can't afford the affordable housing out there. It's so expensive. We're working with families with larger numbers of children. They are in deep, deep trouble. So if you have like 6+ children, it's really hard to find 3 or 4 bedroom apartments. And I even had to work with Pastor John Plowder, because there was a family in his community and they were homeless. And I just said, you know, the worker came to me bawling. She said, I've gone and done a home visit. I can't believe families live in these circumstances. The mom is doing all she can. She just had another baby. And, you know, I am doing all I can to find housing. I think I found something in Chaska, but it might even be 2 months if I can make it happen. Right now they live in Cottage Grove. I said, John, does your faith community do anything like this? And he said, you know, we always talk about it, so it's time to do something. He said, but I am actually leaving for a business trip and I'll let 2 of my parishioners work with you. So I had a Zoom meeting with 2 parishioners and they said, we'll wrap support around that family. And they helped with food. They helped even with hotel stay for a while. They helped the kids all get backpacks for school. They helped the mom. They helped the mom bring the father of one of the children into the discussion about what can you all do together. We'll help. What can we all do as a team? Then they even helped when they moved to Chaska, get them to another Lutheran church who will continue to support that family. And I think Love Inc. in Chaska is going to work with them as well. So it was just a beautiful partnership. The worker who I was partnering with could not believe it. The mom could not believe. Like it was truly angels that ascended onto her family. The children couldn't believe that someone cares about their family. So it was a beautiful story. So we want to do that more and more. Like sometimes it's just a matter of, you know, me hearing the situation, asking for help, and then people stepping up and helping. So that's the next slide, if we could. This is what I was talking about, that pit of homelessness. We really need courageous leaders to think about our children, about keeping them out of that pit of homelessness. And I really think that those who are really at most risk are those who identify as, you know, African-American, you know, BIPOC, people or LGBTQ plus people. They disproportionately are affected. Our people of color in our communities are disproportionately affected by homelessness. And so to me, you cannot talk about homelessness without talking about systemic racism. The 2 go hand in glove. So I will be talking a little bit about that, but this is the problem. Once there's a slippery slope in the families and homelessness, and most of the families most people who are homeless are children, by the way. It's really hard to get moving on to that better life that's more stable. So you can go next slide here. Yeah, here's what we're hearing from practitioners. No one's able to get funds bundled anymore to help people with large amounts of back rent due. Landlords aren't up for negotiation and they're charging double deposits, like I said. Folks aren't even saving their money for the rent owned anymore because they have such desperate needs. So they're using those funds to pay for like food, pay for trying to get their kids, their needs met. And they have no more hope. So they don't really see that they're gonna have a way forward. And that's what one of the young people said to me is, we've lost our way forward and we don't know how to move forward anymore. People need time too. One of the things I said is when you're homeless, the biggest thing you need is time. You need time to regroup. You need time to find better housing. You need time to find the funds to get to housing. You need time to stabilize your kids. They're scared to death. You need time, and they don't have time. And either, like I said, they're doing all these things, and like shelters already, waiting lists are already climbing, and it's not even winter yet. And then emergency assistance. So that's one of the federal programs through the county that offers rent assistance. They have over 200 applications waiting for assignment. They're still getting about 40 applications a day. So everybody's maxed out. So, and also I was talking to this man about, he said, what are you saying people are dropping like flies? A lot of our practitioners have been completely burned out from the pandemic. I know I probably am too, because the work is so intense, but I have a really supportive family. I think that makes a huge difference, but it has been very intense. And one of the reasons I think I wear this mask too, is that I too probably can't get sick for 10 days and be out of commission, because I'm a piece of helping keep everything going for families. So I feel a huge obligation to stay healthy. So next slide. And one of our practitioners said just last Wednesday, system isn't broken now, it's shattered. COVID shattered it. And what she means, and we have never been, as a system of care, we have never been more in touch with every single need out there and working as collaborative partners. The system that she's talking about is when landlords would accept subsidies and we get families housed, and when the county had services and they didn't have long waiting lists for various services, when we had funds, but everything's kind of now shattered. And so it's really hard to keep picking up those pieces. I know I sound like doom and gloom, but it's difficult. So we can go to the next slide. Some of the things I learned from statistics when I was listening to the city of Shoreview is that the suburbs are really fast growing for people living in poverty. And research shows our suburban communities will continue to have more and more people who will live in poverty in our communities, and higher than the growth in the cities, actually. There's high mobility of people moving between city, suburbs, and other communities. So that's why it's like, when people from Hennepin County want to come to my weekly meetings, I'm like, come on over, because we can't really be parochial anymore. The suburbs are growing faster than the cities in their diversity as well. So Minneapolis and St. Paul grew 4%, while suburban populations grew 17% in our diversity, our cultural diversity. And then transportation and affordable housing is so critical in suburban, and without the transportation, you can't get good paying jobs. And so we've had even bus routes that have been discontinued out here. So how are people supposed to work if they don't have transportation? There's not hardly any car repair programs. So I mean, even if they have a car, it's usually not a good car. And it's really that spiraling of not having access and not being able to regain access to these vital services and vital resources. It's about, power and the power of having resource. And African Americans are the highest population without a car, which affects their employment.
I didn't know that.
Next, structural racism. This is just some definitions that I wanted you all to talk with me about. Structural racism, this is one of the definitions. It's the normalization of historical, cultural, institutional, and interpersonal dynamics that routinely advantage white folks, producing cumulative and chronic adverse outcomes for people of color and indigenous people. We have to talk about structural racism, where it's operating, where it's being felt, and figure out where policies and programs can make the greatest improvement. And this is the big quote that I hold in my heart all the time. People are not poor because they lack programs and services. People are poor because they lack power. And has anybody talked about structural racism in this community, and do you understand what this looks like in your communities, and talked about this? Not much?
No.
No. So these may be topics that you might want to explore more and more. And let's go to the next. Institutional racism is a direct cause of poverty. To address poverty, we need to address racism. So one more slide. So really, to dismantle these concepts, we have to acknowledge truth. We really have to talk about this in order to change the trajectory of our nation, our state, our country, and our communities. We have to speak the truth, even if our voice shakes. And I say that because racism is not easy to talk about. Institutional and systemic racism is something that is hard to talk about as well, especially if we're white folks and we have been privileged. We don't even know, that the water that we swim in is water of privilege. So we have a hard time understanding when people say that's racist. That feels like an affront to us personally, like we didn't do anything personally to you. Institutional racism is that we just benefit from these resources that are just available to us that are not available to other folks and people of color. And so that's the thing we are trying to do, is acknowledge these truths as part of breaking the cycle of poverty. So you can go to the next slide. So to undo racism, we will undo poverty, and we just have to talk about both of these. I think secure housing should be a personal right for all. I think every child should have secure and stable housing. And every child should know that when they go to school, they'll know where they're going when they go home that night. I remember I was a social worker many, many years ago, and I was in a cafeteria, and this little boy ran up to his teacher and he said, "I don't know where I'm going to be tomorrow." She goes, what do you mean? And he said, "Mommy lost her house. I don't know where we're going to be tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to see you tomorrow." And I just was like, it just hit me. How must it feel if our kids were experiencing this? And thankfully, my child never had experienced that. But it's time we really talk about how to undo this toxic stress that affects our children as well as their families, their caregivers. So next slide. So this is some other statistics about racism. It's much likely to happen with people living in poverty than white people. Homelessness and food and housing insecurity are disproportionately affecting people of color. White people in the US have 13 times the net worth of Black people. The average Black family would need 228 years to build the wealth of a white family. And race-based barriers such as redlining have historically limited opportunities for people of color to own real estate and accumulate wealth. So one of the things we're involved in with the county is to also look at financial health and wealth creation. And how do we get our communities to understand you need to fully utilize the resources that are available to you, especially if you're a person of color, especially if you're a family whose children are Black or brown. You have to utilize these resources so you can get back into, someday owning your own home, someday having some kind of equity. So I'm working with the county on that, and we have these monthly meetings. We're building a team, a community of upward mobilizers, and we call financial health and wealth creation. And it's a beautiful community that we have like 17 breakout rooms. It's over Zoom. And young people, caregivers and parents, they can visit all these different rooms and learn about all the opportunities that give them financial health and wealth creation, give them jobs and training, get them connected to apprenticeships, all this stuff to help them see the opportunities that we want to make for them. But first you have to stabilize, and you have to meet their immediate needs. Second, we have to involve all the systems so people can help get them exited out of poverty. We have to help them stretch their dollars, what they have now, to fully utilize all the resources. And we have to engage youth and families in the systems as leaders. So their voice is guiding, their leadership is guiding the changes we have to make. And like I said, we have to partner with all the systems to keep families stably housed. Prevention of homelessness is a big piece of my work. Once they're homeless, the cost of rehousing, the cost of having them in emergency shelter, the cost of all of that is so egregious. We need to keep them stable in their housing. And we also need to have them have hope. We need to help them see that they have goals and dreams that get to be heard and get to be realized. And we partner with them as equals to do what we can to help them have their dreams and goals. I work really every day to demand more of myself, more of my organization, more of our system, and more of our nation to help these kids and families. So I feel like my life is in urgency, but it's because I think we have a lot of work to do. And when you think about transformation and systems change, if you boil water, it takes a long time and you have to turn the heat up from the water to be evaporated into a different element, right? We can't turn the heat down. We have to turn the heat up and talk about things like racism, because that's the only way we'll make change and have a new system that will help these families. Okay, next slide. So this is kind of that model I'm saying. We have to meet immediate needs, prevent homelessness, build long-term success, and increase stability to help people get out of poverty. And then we have to undo systems of oppression, build commitment in community, influence how others deliver services, listen to the people we serve, and mobilize people to advocate for themselves. So this is kind of it's a simple model, but that's what we're doing in our collaborative. All these pieces all the time, addressing emergent need, working together, and doing these kind of things. And faith communities could do this too, and we could partner with you. And I think you all are doing pieces of this already, and I am grateful for that. So next slide. This is what I was talking about, building like a one team approach. It requires multi-sectors. It requires government, faith communities, nonprofits, foundations, education, Indigenous people, Black and people of color, families and individuals living in poverty, all of us working together to help people get out of poverty. And I would say where I struggle the most is getting the businesses engaged. I think we have some foundations engaged. Some foundations are becoming really close partners, like coming and meeting with us every week, which is really cool. Faith communities, that has really waned during the pandemic, but more faith communities are coming back and saying, you know, I think we can help again. And education's, you know, they see it every day, so they're very much engaged. The government is very much engaged, but and the nonprofits. So the business section and then getting more engaged in the faith community is one of the things, and foundations. It's one of the things I keep working on every day. So next slide. And this is really a complicated infographic, but we got this grant from Minnesota Housing Finance Agency called Homework Starts with Home. And really it's about preventing homelessness, but if they are homeless, making it brief and non-recurring, and then how to make homelessness rare. So this is kind of the model that we started 6 years ago, and then we got another grant, and we housed like 40 families in subsidized housing and moved well of them into permanent employment, and they're off of being on subsidy, and they're off of being in a homeless situation. They are stably housed. And then we got another grant because we did so well. So, and even Minneapolis didn't get one, and St. Paul didn't get one, but they loved the model that we have, you know, combining all of this kind of complex work with all these systems. So next slide. And then this comes to the Angel Fund. Through the pandemic, you all still did contribute to the Roseville Angel Fund, and that goes to Keystone Community Services, whom we partner with. They get referrals from our school-linked community social workers, community resource navigators, and that little money is bundled with other money to help families stay in their housing to not be homeless. So everything you all are doing, you have a ripple effect. You are a turnkey and you don't even know it. Your funds help so many families get that piece that adds stability for them. So we do this in other communities. I kind of divide our suburban Ramsey County into 4 quadrants. So you partner in the Roseville Angel Fund with Keystone. And then in 621, they have a community support center of all these faith communities that work with the school district in Mounds View. And then in 624, St. Andrews partners with their school district communities. And in 622, There's a connection with the Woodland Hills Church, and they're also supported through saving groups. So we have some really amazing faith community support in all quadrants of Suburban Ramsey. Okay, and the next one. That's too much to talk about. I talked about the three-legged stool. I talked about rejecting complacency and prioritizing those impacted by poverty. Going up the chain of command and challenging policies that perpetuate racism. You know, I've learned so much as a person who has not even known what my privilege is. I've learned so much by being challenged by people of color in my circles. And it's been a really great gift because as I learn, I'm able to challenge the systems and change. And I have some role in that as a director. I have some power in that. And so I am working really hard every day to kind of reject that complacency. And I'll show you, if you go to the last slide, and then I want to hear from you all. There's this really cool little infographic.
That one?
Well, this is just what you guys can all have this PowerPoint. This one, I just love this one because to become anti-racism, you know, you got to get out of the fear zone. You got to deny that it's even a problem. You got to stop denying that. You got to stop avoiding those hard questions and learn. Like I had a really good conversation with one of my best friends in South Dakota. Her and her husband are saying, we don't like that people want to talk about gender pronouns. It's not even, you know, they had this whole thing about gender equity and they didn't like it. And we had an hour conversation, but it was a beautiful conversation, you know, because I see young people in our school districts who don't identify by the same gender as me, you and I do. They are suicidal because they don't feel they belong. And if any one of your daughters or sons had that feeling, you would want to do something about it. And if that means being inclusive with your language, it's a small thing we can do. And she was like, you know, you're right. And then Jeff, her husband, said, you know, Mary Sue, we always learn something new from you. And he was so sweet. So just having those conversations, you know. And then the learning zone, you know, you're starting to recognize it. You ask questions, you're understanding your own privilege, you're educating yourself. You're a little vulnerable and you own your own biases and knowledge gaps, and you listen to others who think and look differently than you. And then you're in a growth zone. I identify how I may unknowingly benefit from racism. I promote and advocate for policies and leaders that are anti-racist. I sit in my own discomfort. It's a hard one, but we do. I speak out when I see racist action. I educate my peers about how racism harms our profession. I don't let mistakes deter me from being better. I yield positions of power to those otherwise marginalized, and I surround myself with others who think and look differently than me. So that's my presentation, just about how poverty and racism are very much connected and how it's impacting our children and kind of the lay of the land out there and what we're trying to do with everybody, all hands on deck, with a shortage of labor and the high needs. Does anybody have questions? And then I'd love to hear what you all are doing. So anybody have questions about the presentation I gave? Was it more than you really bargained for? Yes.
It was more than I bargained.
Okay, is that good or bad?
That's good.
Okay.
There's an awful lot there.
Yes.
And I know we've made attempts here, but just fledgling steps to talk about structural racism. We
Yeah.
haven't done very much with it.
Okay.
But I would love some guidance on how to do that.
Yeah. I will work on getting you some people who could help with that. I will work on that sometime in the few weeks. There are people whose whole job is to help with that. So,
Yeah.
and that isn't me. I'm on a personal journey and everything. You know, one thing I do every day is I have this app that just shows me the history of our nation and racism. And every day I'm appalled at the historical racism that we've continued to perpetuate, but it keeps me awake and it keeps me on my toes. There's little things I can tell you I do, but yeah, I'll find some resources for you for sure. Yeah. Yes.
Most people are not tolerant of learning about this.
Yeah.
Most people believe this is a great country.
Right.
Anybody who thinks this country is above the 50% margin has got their head up their ass, because we have created a system that is so oppressive. And I know everybody thinks I'm crazy because I say this,
No.
but it's a fact. And
Yes.
unless we do something about it, there aren't enough people who are willing to do your job
Right.
to create the problem,
Right.
to fix the problem.
Yeah.
You talked about business up there.
Yeah.
This isn't business's problem. Business should be regulated by the tax structure
Mhm.
and regulation.
Yeah.
We've got one party in our country who thinks all regulation is bad,
Yeah.
and
I know. It's a big subject, but I appreciate your openness and I say straight talk. I like straight talk, because I think it is huge, but that's why I'm living in complexity every day. And I think that's okay, because we have really complex times. But as long as, like, with businesses, I'm not asking them to be the solution. I'm asking them to partner with us. That's all I'm asking. And same with faith communities. We none of us can do this alone. My whole mantra is we are stronger and better together. I mean, truthful. Yes.
I want to thank you. We've had an affordable housing team working on
Yeah.
land for families and children.
Yes.
And we've struggled with how to express or get us together to explain
Right.
the needs and so forth. And you have helped me and you've done it for this group in this room. And that's a helpful start to generate talk with others too.
Exactly.
But,
and I feel the same way about you all. You don't know this, but I hold you all in high esteem, really, truly. Because whenever we have had times we really needed churches to step up, faith communities step up, Prince of Peace is always there, every single time, never fails.
Yeah.
And so I really do appreciate, I'm sure you all have diversity and divergent ideas, but you still come back together. You all have something that bonds you, and that's a belief in a higher power that's here to love everybody. And you want to do good, right? And you're all here, no matter what, in your own walks of life, still staying here after a pandemic, after all that we've been through. You could be all on your own road, but you're not. You still come back. And you listen to someone like me, And I appreciate that too, just as much as you appreciate what I'm trying to do. But each of us has just a little to give. We can't all do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so overwhelming. And I have to remind myself that every day, pick your head up, Mary Sue, and ask for help. You just have to. I'm not going to just head down into the wind. I'm going to take care of the world. That's crazy. So today is, one more plea to stay engaged. And I'm so grateful that you are. So thank you. Yeah.
Could you just speak about, or do you have any statistics? If you spoke up, causes like being BIPOC or about physical disabilities or
Yeah.
mental illnesses as part of
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
obstacles as well.
I don't have statistics, but what I can tell you in Suburban Ramsey, in our own communities, and I do have, did I give you that? But in Roseville, it's always the majority of kids and families who are homeless or who identify as LGBTQ. They're disproportionately homeless than their white counterparts every year. And so only maybe different district, I think White Bear Lake's 49%, but that was during the pandemic, but it's mostly always over 50, 60, 70% that are disproportionately BIPOC or LGBTQ. But I can get you those, but I'm also so busy. I don't spend a ton of time looking at stats. We just got a lot going on, and so, but I can give you the school district stats from a couple of years ago. But the homeless rates of students during the pandemic actually decreased significantly because there was an eviction moratorium. And so those rates don't really reflect what's happening now. whole different scenario. And the term of mental health, and why I tie that in,
Mhm.
is the toxic stress has been so enormous with our kids in social isolation during the pandemic. So if they had mental health kind of struggles before that, that was exasperated. Exasperated, is that how you say that?
Yeah.
Totally during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Now they have to get back in school, having to address that social isolation. Now social anxiety, getting back in school.
Mhm.
Their parents are dealing with all these economic struggles. So the whole family is really needing support. So we're just launching a program called Collaborative Schooling Mental Health. It's a whole family approach to mental health. And it moves these families into rapid access, 3 free rapid access appointments, move into then short-term mental health therapy for stabilization, 6 to 16 sessions. And then we move them to a collaborative care team so they have a pathway to other supports for mental health. But we can't do long-term stabilization, long-term therapy because we have so much need coming through. So the best we can do is try to stabilize and help them connect to other resources. So that model is being launched right now and it's successful, but it's really a divergent model from the school-based mental health model where families or kids come to you, you stay with them maybe throughout the school year, maybe work with them next year. Well, we have too much need to do that. We have to try something different. So long story short, that's why I combine all of these things because it has to be a whole family approach to helping folks get out of poverty, stay in their homes, prevent homelessness, and address the mental health needs that are going on in their lives. Yeah.
It just strikes me as you're talking, you know, we do, all of us here, I think, a lot of work in charity,
Yeah.
very charitable, and which is
Yeah.
very, very, very important. I don't want to
Yes.
diminish it
No.
whatsoever.
No.
But systemic change
Right.
is really needed and very difficult. That's
Yes.
really hard work.
It is.
And
It
yeah,
is.
as you know, better than I do. But I guess what I want to say is, how do we do that without, it has something to do with who we elect to office.
Absolutely.
It has a lot to do with ourselves being involved
Yes.
in that,
Yes.
supporting those people in office who are working hard
Yeah.
for change.
Yeah.
And I don't know what else to say, but that's what it strikes me when
Yeah.
I hear you speak here.
Well, and not denying that what's going on, it may not be impacting you, but not denying what's happening and impacting others. You know, I think if we other people and say that's their issue and not ours, I think that's where we stay in trouble. But if we can learn, like, this is why you guys were the first congregation to host a ISI. And I don't know if any of you know what that stands for, but intentional social interaction. We had Marnita's table, we were in your gym, and it's a model that helps us socialize across race, age, class, culture, and other means of self-identity. And we had a huge group, and most of the people in the room, like probably 60% was people of color, kids of color, all different ages. Kids came to me and said, this is what I thought community was supposed to be. This right here. Can we do more of this? Because we had beautiful food, we had beautiful conversations, and we made connections, you know, and we learned and heard what people's stories are. And once you hear their stories, that changes you. Some of the leaders of color who are in Roseville said, this was the first time I truly felt welcomed in my community. And so why I'm talking about Izzy and why I'm talking about hearing other people's stories is we have to find some way to socially connect again across these differences so we can again bind our story to their story and then to work together to have the beloved community that Martin Luther King talks about, you know. I think it's possible. I still believe in history. So now, can you tell me all what you're doing? Please, can I sit down and just listen? Because I want to hear who wants to talk, and I'm here to help because I think that, you know, even if we work one family at a time, I heard that a tiny house is coming and you're going to partner with a family or something. Can you guys talk about that? Anybody? Hello? Okay.
Well, is Pastor Peter back there? I can't see. him.
No.
Oh, he would know.
That's why you were silent.
Past
Okay.
10:30, so we got to.
Oh,
Oh,
we
we have to
speed
move.
up.
Oh,
Well,
sorry.
I can come another time.
Michael can, yes.
Oh, hi.
Hi. First of all, my apologies. I have influence.
Oh, we can't hear him.
Can't hear you.
I have to go.
And I can bring another
time too. I don't want to keep you.
Peter,
Peter's not here.
can anybody hear me?
not very
Just barely.
Well,
It's
since
okay.
you can't hear me, I will just pause and let somebody else talk.
Okay, he's gonna let someone else talk. Yeah,
So there's another church that has an organization where on their property, they have set it up
Yep.
for 6 tiny.
the
homes.
Sacred Settlement in Mosaic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know
I'm not
that.
sure of the details.
Yep.
But the lady that lives in the bus
Yeah,
on that side of our property
yeah.
was the 7th person
Oh,
on the list.
oh,
So she's connected with that community,
okay,
but there isn't enough tiny homes available there
Okay.
for her.
yeah,
And winter's coming and her bus won't hack it
yep,
in the winter.
right.
And she's living in a car
So,
now.
Oh.
so that community had an extra tiny home,
Oh,
but they didn't have the
us,
real estate to
Yes,
set it
and
down.
churches do.
We happen to have the real estate to set it down.
Beautiful.
So we worked with that community
Oh,
and we're gonna have that tiny home placed on our property over
Awesome.
there, and there'll be another RV there for the way the tiny homes. There are people that need to live there, and there's also people that live there.
I know the
in
model. I
support.
love it. Yep, okay.
And so there'll be a support person
Nice.
living in an RV, and then there'll be the tiny home.
And does this woman have children or just she's single? Okay,
Single.
okay, wonderful. And you're gonna probably partner with her, be a support to her as well as that person who's their support person?
Yeah.
Okay, and maybe, if this ever becomes something you all think of doing in the future too, like another tiny home with kids or something, I have all these social workers who could help you with these families. We could partner, I know in Roseville, Tim, he and his students would love to build a tiny home for you, and partner with you. So there's just so many things. But the fact that you're even willing to do one thing different and your congregation is open to that, that's really encouraging for me. I think we have to just celebrate the small but mighty steps that will help us change, every step of the way. You don't change until something changes, and you guys are changing, and that gets me so excited. Yes,
Thank you, Mary Sue,
Yes.
for being such a passionate
yeah, I am way passionate.
government and support. And I hope, I know you've inspired me,
Oh,
and I hope you've inspired everybody else to continue with this big challenge.
no, and I'm here with you every day, and seriously, just call me if you have anything. Like, people call me and say, oh, what do? I heard about this person. The guy who fixed my gas fireplace, he said, what do you do? Because he was listening to my Zoom meetings. He go, I have a homeless man who's been in our neighborhood for 6 months, and everybody we call doesn't help him. I said, well, I'll call Dave. He called me, he and his wife called me that afternoon and said, that guy Dave is coming out tomorrow. He said, who are you? And then, it's not me. I've been doing this for 20 years, 24 years. Because I know all these people who are change agents, just like you are. I know the right people to talk to, and we do it together. So don't feel alone. I call it a buddy system. We let our egos kind of fly out the door, and we just say, how do we learn together? How do we make a better community together? I'm all in. So thank you all so much. All right, thank you.